With the WINN FM News, I am Kevin Brown.
And I am Yolana Weeks.
Our top stories.
St. Kitts and Nevis Prime Minister continues to laud minimum wage increase as a significant financial move by government.
Viewer by Von Anslin leaves a lasting impression at Carifesta 15.
Nevis Premier says Culturama 52 preparations are already underway. Police investigating burglary and assault case in Sadlers. National of Dominica charged with importation of cannabis offences in St. Kitts and Nevis. Antigua and Barbuda reaffirms foreign policy stance amid U.S.-Venezuela tensions. Gonorrhea, a growing concern in Jamaica. Internationally, European Union defense ministers meet in Denmark, discuss bolstering European security.
Now, the details.
Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, the Honourable Dr. Terence Drew, during a recent interview on issues, brought to the public what he feels is a necessary perspective shift regarding the recent increase in the Federation's minimum wage. The most recent minimum wage increase in St. Kitts and Nevis took effect on July 1st, 2025, raising the minimum wage to EC $12.50 per hour or $500 per week for a 40-hour work week, the highest minimum wage in the OECS based on recent analysis. The Prime Minister emphasized the importance of the increase, citing that a wage dispute sparked the Buckley's uprising.
And that has been a founding principle of the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party back then when it was the Workers' League, when it was started in the 1930s. And just to add, we are the oldest political party, the oldest Labour Party in the whole region. And I think it's because we have stuck to principles like these, like seeking to improve workers' conditions.
Definitely.
And wage increase is one of the most significant ways in which you can do that. Why is a minimum wage increase so important? One, it says that persons who work should not work for less than a particular amount. Secondly, it put money in people's pocket. Joni, when you increase the minimum wage from $9 per hour to $12.50 per hour, that's going from $340 per hour, $360 per hour, to $500. $360 per week to $500 per week, which equates to over $500 extra per month. And that goes to thousands of people. And that is why I say that this has put more money in people's pocket, going from $360, $340, all the way up to $500 per week. So when you calculate it per month, it's over $500 per month. But the reason why a wage is so important, an increase in wage, one, you cover thousands of people.
With the increase, the government views it as a means of solidifying the financial standing of citizens.
Secondly, it empowers people because people would have more money in their pocket, so the spending power goes up. This has benefits socially, even psychologically, when a worker would work for more. In addition to that, it means that if someone with an increased minimum wage were to go to a bank, they're standing before the financial institution, in this case a bank, is much better. And it gives them an opportunity to be able to have a mortgage, whereas before it might have been more challenging. Not that you would not have any challenge, but increasing your income, going before a bank, increases your chances. Thirdly, when you reach the age of retirement, your social security would be higher. So this is not just putting money in people's pocket now. It's money being put in people's pocket now, and money being put in people's pocket later on when they retire. That is why an increase in minimum wage is so significant and so powerful. Let's say you were to have a program where it is not linked to wage. One, that can be cut at any time, because it's not in law that you must receive it. Secondly, when you come to your retirement is not based on those things. It's based on your wage income or your salary income, how much ever you bring in. And thirdly, when you go before a financial institution, they would not count any other income outside of what they would consider to be a wage, a salary, or from a business. If they just think it's a passive transfer, it will not go towards your standing before financial institution. So on those three things, that is why the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party always seek to increase people's wages and salaries. And that is why the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party must be commended for this tremendous policy position in terms of empowering our people. Says more money in people's pocket now, guys, over $500 per month for thousands and thousands of workers. Secondly, when you go before a financial institution, your position is stronger. And thirdly, when you retire, you get a larger social security, a larger pension as a result.
The increase in the minimum wage has been a topic of debate for some time, as while the need to support workers is acknowledged, concerns persist about the potential effects of the wage hike. Opposition leader and Premier of Nevis, the Honourable Mark Brantley, voiced concerns that if not managed correctly, the minimum wage increase could lead to higher prices, effectively erasing the benefit for workers. Brantley's sentiment was also echoed, as some commentators have warned of a wage increase illusion, where higher wages are offset by higher prices and a higher cost of living, leaving low-income earners in the same predicament. The private sector has also raised doubts about the economic readiness to absorb the changes, expressing fears that the increase could threaten fragile businesses. The Prime Minister continues to report the positives of the increase.
Now, in addition to all of this, because there is more money in people's pockets, spending goes up, and this can help local businesses as there will be faster turnover of goods moving through the economy. And as a result of that, you will see the benefit there as well. And so I want to say that this really is a tremendous achievement to have this minimum wage to impact the lives of so many thousands of workers here in St. Kitts and Nevis.
The debate surrounding the increase encompasses the government's support of economic justice and freedoms, taking into account the cost of living in St. Kitts and Nevis. In contrast, others remain cautious about the broader economic implications.
Caribbean creativity took center stage at CariFesta 15 as artists from across the region showcased their fashion lines in a vibrant show on August 28, 2025. The event highlighted the fusion of traditional techniques with modern styles, bringing together culture, fashion, and artistry. The fashion show featured Viwear, a clothing line owned by Vaughn Anslin, a St. Kitts Nevis artist and designer. Supported by Barbadian male models, Anslin unveiled clothing and bag collections.
I really came to CariFesta 15 to showcase my work. I just featured my clothing line called Viwear. All the models were male and they're all from Barbados. I also the reception was very good. It was very positive.
Viwear stood out for its intricate patterns, uniqueness, and sustainable craftsmanship. Anslin told WINN FM that the showcase led to new opportunities, both in terms of sales and long-term brand recognition.
I got a lot of orders for stuff. When I get home, I have to make some clothes and send them back. The Caribbean line was a big hit. People loved the fact that I could create the Caribbean flags in paint like that, so that's a very unique hit as well. But overall, the reception was very positive because most of what I've done, most people haven't seen before, and it's a big twist on fashion, and I think it was very well received by everyone. So I'm glad I came.
The CariFesta fashion segment continues to grow in importance, offering artists an international platform to market their creations.
Following what officials are calling a successful hosting of Culturama 51 held on Nevis from July 24th to August 5th, 2025, attention has already shifted to Culturama 52. During his August 28th, 2025 press conference, Premier of Nevis, the Honourable Mark Brantley, shared that the Culturama Secretariat is already tasked with preparatory work for the 2026 hosting of the Caribbean's greatest summer lime.
So may I ask, why is he talking about Culturama? Culturama 51 just finished. Well, Culturama 52 is in full swing already. My indication and the Cabinet's indication to Minister Evelyn as the Minister of Culture is that we have a full-time Culturama Secretariat. Let them get to work immediately. And they have done so. Preparations have begun for Culturama 52. That will be celebrated from July 23rd to August 4th, 2026.
Registration is currently open for a myriad of components of Culturama 52, including the slogan contest for the next festival, which is underway with a submission deadline of October 31st, 2025.
Slogan competition entries are now open for that competition. Slogans must be between 8 and 10 words and reflect the spirit of the festival. And the submission deadline is Friday, October 31st. You can email your slogans to slogan@culturamanevis.com or deliver it to the Culturama Secretariat. The winner will receive $500 cash, a plaque, and passes to all events. Senior and youth pageants registration is now open for Miss Culture Queen, Miss Culture Swimwear, Mr. Cool, and Mr. and Miss Talented Youth Pageant. I'm calling on all of our schools. The government has some 9 primary schools that they get ready because we want to see all the schools represented on stage during Culturama. The registration deadline is November 28th for the pageants, and forms can be collected at the Culturama Secretariat or online at www.culturamanevis.com.
Culturama 52 is scheduled from July 23rd to August 4th, 2026. The Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force is investigating a reported burglary and assault that occurred in Sadler's St. Kitts on August 27, 2025 between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. at the home of Winston Monster Phipps. Phipps told the police that he woke up when he was called through his window. As he looked, someone's hand extended through the window holding a firearm. Another masked assailant, a male individual, breached a door and both assailants forcibly entered his home and demanded money. The men then assaulted him before stealing a sum of cash and fleeing the scene. Phipps sustained injuries to his body and was taken by ambulance to the Josephine France General Hospital, where he was admitted to the surgical ward for treatment. Anyone with information on the identity of the perpetrators is asked to contact the nearest police station or Crime Stoppers hotline at 707. The Anti-Narcotics Unit responded on August 25, 2025 to a report of suspected cannabis importation at the Deepwater Port at Bird Rock, St. Kitts on a vessel that had come from Dominica. Officers searched the vessel and located a quantity of packaged vegetable material suspected to be cannabis. Eli Burton of Dominica, a member of the crew, was taken into police custody, along with the contraband later confirmed to be cannabis. Burton was charged on August 26, 2025 by the police for the importation of cannabis and possession of cannabis with intent to supply. He was hit with 2 additional charges by the St. Kitts and Nevis Customs and Excise Department on August 27, 2025, which were importing goods to wit cannabis packed in manner intended to deceive a customs officer and attempting to fraudulently evade customs with respect to the importation of restricted goods to wit cannabis.
In regional news,
Antigua and Barbuda reaffirms foreign policy stance amid U.S.-Venezuela tensions, ABS Antigua reports.
The United States has stepped up its presence in the southern Caribbean, deploying at least 7 naval vessels near Venezuela. Washington says the operation is aimed at drug cartels and has accused President Nicolas Maduro of leading the so-called Cartel de los Soles. But government officials here say Antigua and Barbuda will not take sides in the U.S.-Venezuela standoff.
Antigua and Barbuda's foreign policy is that Antigua and Barbuda does not take sides in any of these matters involving states. Antigua and Barbuda is a friend of all, an enemy of none.
According to Director General of Communications in the Prime Minister's office, Maurice Merchant, Prime Minister Gaston Brown maintains strong ties with both Washington and Caracas and has even offered to act as a mediator.
He has an excellent relationship with the United States administration. He has an excellent relationship with the Venezuelan administration. And a few weeks ago, you would have heard the Prime Minister offered to be the broker of certain discussions between not only the United States and Venezuela, but the United States and the People's Republic of China in some of their disputes.
Still, some CARICOM partners are striking a different tone. In Trinidad and Tobago, Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Bissessar has publicly backed the U.S. naval buildup, calling it a necessary step against drug cartels, and even suggesting Port of Spain could provide access to American forces. But Antigua and Barbuda's government insists neutrality is the wiser course.
Choosing sides in disputes only exacerbates the problem, and that's Antigua and Barbuda's position diplomatically. that there is always the need for someone to say, peace. Let us approach peace.
Prime Minister Gaston Brown is engaged in ongoing talks behind the scenes with CARICOM colleagues as regional governments keep watch on how the standoff may affect some of its initiatives, like the social programs. Alicia George for ABS News.
Gonorrhea, a growing concern in Jamaica. Television Jamaica has that story.
Gonorrhea is a common infection in Jamaica. It spreads through sexual contact and is caused by bacteria.
It's a disease-causing agent that is usually transmitted through sexual intercourse from one partner that is infected to another. What happens when a person gets infected with gonorrhea is that they will begin to have symptoms within the reproductive system. This may include, but not limited to, in males, for example, burning while urinating. They'll also have a discolored discharge that can be yellow or green in nature, and it also has an odor. In females, similarly, they may also experience burning while urinating, and a discolored discharge of yellow or green nature as well.
Medical experts say the infection poses a higher risk to sexually active women under 25 and men who have sex with men. Experts warn that if left untreated, gonorrhea can lead to serious health complications.
One of the impacts of sexually transmitted disease overall is that it results in infertility. So you can have, issues with conceiving. So at the time of conception, people may find it more difficult to get pregnant, in women particularly. Gonorrhea, chlamydia tends to affect the tubes, the fallopian tubes, and can actually be a cause of what we call pelvic inflammatory disease. And that in and of itself results in what we call tubular scarring. So Jamaicans call it block tubes, and of course that is one of our causes of infertility here in Jamaica.
Diagnosis typically involves a urine test and a swab of the affected area, which help confirm the presence of the infection. The condition can be treated.
We have specific drugs that we use, antibiotics. Oftentimes your healthcare provider would probably provide you with the CDC guidelines where we use an injection and tablets. But also one of the things that is of note, when treating gonorrhea, we should always suspect the patient having also chlamydia, because chlamydia is also a condition that seemingly goes hand in hand with gonorrhea, but is oftentimes asymptomatic.
Individuals are being encouraged to practice safe sex and seek medical attention to prevent complication and spreading the disease. With your health report, I'm Shamela Pullen wishing you good health.
We now bring you these international reports.
EU defense ministers were supposed to continue finalizing their plans to deploy soldiers in Ukraine if any peace deal between Ukraine and Russia is agreed. But amidst the latest escalation, EU countries fear the worst. Poland scrambled jets and put its air defense systems on the highest state of alert as Russia launched multiple overnight missile and drone attacks on Kyiv.
Well, as you know, due to Russia's full-scale invasion into Ukraine, Sweden and Finland changed our postures, and we're part of NATO now. We're safer, NATO is stronger. For us, this has been a good way to strengthen the northern flank.
Iran was also on the agenda after the UK, Germany and France began the process of restoring major sanctions that were lifted under a 2015 deal. The Europeans want Iran to make concessions over its nuclear program or face further isolation.
If you read the JCPOA and the conditions that are there, then Iran hasn't met those conditions for quite some time. So it is the decision of E3, and of course now we have this 30 days to sort things out and maybe have a different solution.
The EU is also under pressure to take action against the deteriorating situation in Gaza. EU countries have warned they may suspend their association agreement if Israel doesn't end the war in Gaza.
It is absolutely imperative now that Europe matches its words of condemnation with concrete actions against Israel to help bring about a ceasefire, see a surge in humanitarian aid, and of course see the release of all the hostages. And I look forward to talking with colleagues about that. There's a whole spectrum of actions that could be taken under the association agreement to show Israel that Europe actually stands up for its values.
EU leaders face major security challenges For now, they strongly believe their only chance to counter Russian threats is to ensure the US remains fully committed to Europe's security. But the EU fears it may be forced to deploy troops and provide substantial military assistance without major US involvement, a move that for many could expose the weakness of European military posturing in the face of Russian military might. Hashim Akbar, Al Jazeera, Copenhagen.
Anger and concern in Tehran after Britain, Germany and France triggered a process to reimpose UN sanctions over Iran's nuclear program. The Islamic Republic rejects Western accusations that it's seeking a nuclear weapon, but the three powers say it has violated a 2015 deal and have launched the so-called snapback mechanism that sets sanctions in train. Israel and the United States bombed Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile facilities during an Israel-Iran war in June. Israeli strikes that month killed top nuclear scientists. The UN's International Atomic Energy Agency says Iran is dramatically increasing enrichment of uranium to up to 60% purity, close to the roughly 90% weapons-grade level. And Western countries say such a high level isn't needed for civilian uses. But Iran says its program is peaceful. Science is power, this billboard says. Here's Sanam Vakil of London's Chatham House think tank.
After the war, Iran evicted IAEA inspectors from Tehran, so its nuclear facilities have not been assessed, and the damage to those facilities have not been assessed by the IAEA, and there has been no formal assessment by any international body. There have been some intelligence assessments. So in absence of that oversight, there is really no clarity. Iran could be using this lack of oversight to make some advancements should its program have survived, or some parts and components of its program survived. Iran could at the same time be trying to use the lack of oversight as a leverage point to gain some concessions and return to the negotiating table.
The Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA, of 2015 lifted UN, US and European sanctions on Tehran in return for curbs on its nuclear program. As well as Iran and the three European powers, the US, Russia and China all signed. A UN Security Council resolution that year enshrined the deal. But that resolution expires October 18, as does the ability of any party to the deal to trigger a sanctions snapback. Snapback launches the sanctions process at the 15-member UN Security Council. Now the Security Council must vote within 30 days on a resolution to continue Iran's sanctions relief. That's expected to fail, since Britain, France and the United States have veto powers. If so, all UN sanctions on Iran will be reimposed in late September. Russia and China say Germany, France and Britain have not followed the dispute resolution process outlined in the deal. So why did they launch snapback?
They would like to use this pressure on Iran to return oversight on Iran's nuclear program, as well as return to the negotiating table in order to bring more transparency and accountability on this important international issue.
I will sign a presidential memorandum.
US President Donald Trump's decision to withdraw from the Iran nuclear agreement in 2018 led to what Vakil calls a cascade of crises. Iran began moving away from its nuclear-related commitments under the accord.
If we have to do something very hard.
Trump restored a maximum pressure campaign. And with the war in June, indirect nuclear talks between Iran and the US were suspended.
So in this context, in this landscape of mistrust, diplomatic uncertainty, and I would say above all, lack of leadership in Iran, but also in the international community, we're entering into yet another round of protracted tensions and perhaps even conflict.
International Atomic Energy Agency Chief Rafael Grossi said on Tuesday that the first team of IAEA inspectors is back in Iran, and the agency was still discussing how to resume inspections.
There are many facilities, some were attacked, some were not.
Britain, France and Germany have offered to extend the snapback mechanism for a limited time. They say that would allow more time for negotiations, with the aim of reaching a new agreement.
We urge Iran to reconsider this position.
Now, on Monday, Nasser Hospital, the largest in southern Gaza and one of the few still partially operating in the Strip, was hit twice by Israeli strikes. At least 20 people were reportedly killed, including journalists and medical staff. A new investigation by BBC Verify has uncovered that the hospital was hit 4 times. With me now is Merlin Thomas from BBC Verify. Hi, Merlin. So tell us more about what you've uncovered.
Initially, reports from Gaza said that Israel had hit Nasser Hospital twice, but our investigation has uncovered that, in fact, Israel had hit the hospital 4 times. Now, let me talk you through the timeline a bit. There was a hit at 10:08 a.m. local time when Hussam al-Masri, a journalist who was operating a live feed for Reuters, was killed on the eastern staircase of Nasser Hospital. Now, new footage we've obtained shows that at practically the same time, the northern staircase was also hit. You can see smoke pouring out of the northern staircase as well as the eastern staircase. Now, the blast at the northern staircase had previously gone unreported because the so-called double strike on the hospital had overshadowed this blast that we have uncovered. And videos we've seen show an injured person being carried down the stairs, and we've shown the videos of the damage inside the hospital as well to munitions experts who said that this damage appeared consistent with a relatively small munition travelling at a relatively flat trajectory as well.
And then how does this follow through? Because there was then another strike.
Yes, so 9 minutes later, Israel hit the eastern staircase again, and that is where there were first responders and journalists, and that is when they were killed. Now, when we slow the video down and watch it frame by frame, we can see that actually there is one projectile, and then you see the blast itself, and then we see a subsequent projectile as well, which those 2 projectiles are within a fraction of a second of each other, which brings the total number of times that Israel has hit the hospital to 4 times.
And Israel is conducting its own investigation. What have they said?
Well, their statements on this attack have evolved over the past week since the attack itself. So initially, the Israeli military said that it regretted harm to uninvolved individuals. Then, hours later, Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister, said that he called it a tragic mishap. And then on Tuesday, when there was an initial inquiry conducted by the Israeli military, they said that it had been targeting a, quote, camera positioned by Hamas, but they didn't provide any evidence of this. And when we presented our findings to the Israeli military, they didn't add any additional comments, and they still haven't acknowledged the multiple strikes on the hospital. But our investigation raises multiple questions about why Israel hit the hospital 4 times.
The story of the deaths of hundreds of followers of Pastor Paul Mackenzie 2 years ago shocked the world. People here are now astounded that the story is not over. Last month, reports of missing children in Malindi County in Kenya's Coast Province led police investigators to this site, where they've exhumed dozens of bodies in the last 2 weeks.
This particular site, the bodies look a bit fresh. They are not fully skeletonized, unlike last week. The bodies we exhumed last week were full skeletons with no flesh. But the bodies we found here look to have been buried a few months or weeks ago.
It's just 15 kilometres from the Shakahola forest, where Mackenzie led his followers before survivors say he told them to starve themselves to death so they could meet Jesus Christ. Investigators said some of the 400 bodies exhumed 2 years ago showed signs of starvation, and others, including children, had been beaten to death. Mackenzie was arrested and charged with murder, manslaughter and torturing children. He's pleaded not guilty. His trial was adjourned last month, awaiting new evidence. Kenya's Interior Minister has said Mackenzie's using a mobile phone to continue leading his cult from his cell. The area where he led his followers and where fresh bodies are now being exhumed is desolate bush, largely uninhabited. It's hard for people to survive here, and few people see if they come here to die or be killed.
2 weeks now toka Binzaro ianze.
It's been 2 weeks since the exhumation began, yet the county government hasn't issued a statement. We wonder if they're involved in this. They need to come forward so that we can find a way of ending religious extremism.
People in the nearby community say the followers who arrived here recently aren't from around here. Previously, many of Mackenzie's followers were inspired by his YouTube channel and came from other parts of Kenya seeking emancipation. Their deaths prompted widespread calls for Kenya's churches, some of them connected to powerful politicians, to be held to account. But nothing has changed in time to stop it happening again. Malcolm Webb, Al Jazeera.
You were listening to the WINN FM 98.9 newscast. Our top stories were:
St. Kitts and Nevis Prime Minister continues to laud minimum wage increase as a significant financial move by government.
Viewer by Vaughan Anslin leaves a lasting impression at Carifesta 15.
Nevis Premier says Culturama 52 preparations are already underway. Police investigating burglary and assault case in Sadlers. National of Dominica charged with importation of cannabis offences in St. Kitts and Nevis. Antigua and Barbuda reaffirms foreign policy stance amid U.S.-Venezuela tensions. Gonorrhea, a growing concern in Jamaica. Internationally, European Union defense ministers meet in Denmark, discuss bolstering European security.
Thank you for listening.